Yo, welcome back. This is NFL Talk of Elite Wages. This is episode 2 of NFL Week 2. Obviously, the episode 1 was for, my recap from Week 1, Thursday Night Football, and the collab bet that myself and Daly have. I'm not going to talk about those. Obviously, the results have already been. Everyone knows the scores. But I will recap those in next week's episode, so I'm not going to talk about them today. I'm instead going to do the rest of my NFL card for Week 2. It's Sunday, all the Sunday games, Sunday Night Football, Monday Night Football, and we have a Tuesday Night Football game as well. So we're going to go with the grain here. And obviously there's a lot of good and useful information gained during NFL Week 1 last week. With all the information, let's roll into Week 2. It's hard to actually pick an underdog this week, in my opinion, given most of the dogs actually lost their season opener. Favourites went 13-3 straight up last week, and the way some of these teams played, it's hard to see why they would be considered a favourite, the teams that lost. But with that being said, I've tried my hardest to snipe the best bets for NFL Week 2, and with that, we're going to start with the Indianapolis Colts -3. Odds on that are 1.9. Richardson missed majority of last season, but it's always been known he's got pure talent. He's a really talented guy. He's a mobile quarterback. He loves to use his legs as well as using his arm. He can throw dimes on demand, and obviously you can rush for a few first downs if you wanted to, and he showed that last week against the Texans. The Colts went toe-to-toe with one of the most hyped up teams in the NFL this season, the Houston Texans. The Colts scored 27 points in this game. It probably wasn't expected, prior. The offense was clicking for Richardson on the Colts. They finished with over 300 total yards, 4 offensive touchdowns, and one slight downside for the Colts was they couldn't quite get Jonathan Taylor going. He is also back from injury. He was an injury hit last season. But if they do figure that out and figure out how to get Jonathan Taylor going, they can be very scary to a lot of teams this year. Defensively, they gave up 29 points. They allowed over 400 yards from scrimmage to the Texans, 3 offensive touchdowns. But this Houston team is stacked all over the field, so that's probably to be expected. A lot of teams are hyping up the Texans this year to be one of the teams that could potentially reach the Super Bowl. So, with those offensive players that they have, now they have Stephon Diggs as well. They're looking very, very good, so it's hard not to predict that they're going to score points. The Texans' offense was carried by Joe Mixon. He essentially iced the game for Houston with some crucial first downs to end the game. And in all honesty, that shouldn't be much of a problem this week against the Packers. Obviously, being a Packers fan, Josh Jacobs, I'm quite high on. He's a very good, solid runner. He played very well last week. But I think the Colts will figure things out, and I think they'll solidify their run, especially in their run defense, especially in the absence of Jordan Love for Green Bay. Like I said, Joe Mixon, he rushed for over, I think it was 159 yards last week. I don't expect that sort of productivity replicated this week with Josh Jacobs and the Packers. The Colts, they shouldn't be tested as much this week as they were by CJ Stroud and Joe Mixon, with a backup for the backup quarterback for the Packers. It is looking likely it's going to be Malik Willis, and if the Colts do manage to stop the run game for the Packers, that's going to be a huge problem for the Pack. In the Packers' Week 1 matchup with the Eagles, they struggled defensively. They allowed 410 yards, 34 total points, which is a large number that you don't want to be allowing this early on in the season. So they did have 3 takeaways, which helped their offense score 9 points. 3 field goals. They should have got a few of those in for touchdowns, but ultimately they didn't. But despite those 3 takeaways, they still got cooked by Barkley and co. And obviously, as a Packers fan, again, I know this for a fact. Barkley has been able to run all over us for a number of years. This game is obviously no different. 132 scrimmage yards, 3 total touchdowns. During the 2023 season, the Colts actually covered a -3 spread in 7 of their 9 wins. The other 2 wins, they actually came by 3 points. So their average win was by 7 points last season. And on the other side, the Packers actually lost 8 games last year. 6 of those were by 3 or more points. As I previously said, if the Colts and more in particular Jonathan Taylor, if they get his run game going, they could be a huge problem for the Packers this week. I expect Taylor and Richardson to work it out between them, work out their workload between themselves, and if they manage to stop the Green Bay run game, it'll be a huge focus for them heading into this matchup. If they solidify their run defense, it's looking more and more likely that the run game is going to be headed by Josh Jacobs, and it's going to be it's going to be their main thing this week. I don't think they'll trust Willis with a lot of the ball. I think it's going to be in Josh Jacobs' hands quite a lot, and if it's not him, it's going to be the run game. So if the Colts can actually stop and slow down that run game, I think they win this game quite comfortably. And although they gave up 29 points last week to the Texans, I don't see the Packers being that much of a threat this week. I think the Colts will handle business at Lambeau Field this week. So again, that's Indianapolis Colts -3 at odds of 1.9. Moving on to probably one of the matchups of the week. A lot of people are going to be looking towards this game, and it's probably one of the most backed plays this week actually. So it's in the Kansas City and the Bengals game. I'm actually going to go with the Chiefs -4.5. The line's been moving around a lot. It did start at -7. I managed to get it down at -4.5, and that's with odds at 1.8. The Chiefs actually handled business against their AFC title contending rivals Baltimore Ravens, and they actually beat them by a touchdown score on opening night. They face a tough 2 opening games at least. They played the Ravens and Bengals, both were thought to be contenders for the AFC this season. Last season, the Chiefs were near the top offensively and defensively, and again they looked solid offensively and defensively to start the year. Pat Mahomes has found a really, really nice rhythm and a nice balance between Rashee Rice, Xavier Worthy and Travis Kelce, as well as having Pacheco in the backfield as well. So he's got a nice ton of options there on offense. A small concern for me in that opener was how they let Derrick Henry and Lamar Jackson run the ball efficiently and effectively. Baltimore ran for 185 yards and they averaged 5.8 yards per carry. Baltimore have been towards the top of the rushing category for a number of years, so that is something to bear in mind. Last season, they were the team that rushed the most in the NFL, so that was probably to be expected. But in this matchup, however, the Bengals' run game shouldn't be a problem. Not near enough of a problem as it was for them against the Ravens last week. Anyway, their star running back Joe Mixon is now a Texan, so they've moved on from Joe Mixon. The Bengals are down to Zach Moss at running back 1. As a team, last week they only rushed for 70 yards. Joe Burrow got his star receiver back for the game against the Patriots, Jamar Chase, but that didn't really matter. Joe Burrow just threw 164 passing yards. I think Jamar Chase had about 60. Obviously, T. Higgins was also declared out for this game as well, so you got 1 star receiver back and 1 star receiver out. The Patriots actually played a really nice game and they stood tall against this potentially hot Cincinnati Bengals offense. The Bengals have previously been the team for the Chiefs to beat in the AFC. Last season, the Chiefs took their head-to-head game. They won it by 8, and they also won their AFC Championship game by 3 the season prior. The Chiefs and the Bengals have started on 2 different trajectories this season. The Chiefs with a fairly solid win against a top team in the league, and then the Bengals suffered a shocking loss really against the Patriots, who were ranked as the 3rd worst team in the NFL last season. If that's anything to go by, then the Bengals are in big trouble in this matchup. Last season, the Chiefs went 4-1 in their first 5 home games, and the Bengals went 5-3 away from home. One of those losses being against the Chiefs, Again, they lost by 8. The Chiefs covered a 4.5 spread in 9 of their 11 wins last season, and the Bengals lost by 5 or more points in 6 of their 8 losses in 2023. The Chiefs, they've got their home crowd to help them in this game. I expect another win against a team who struggled in the season opener, and obviously it was against one of last season's worst teams. Anything under a touchdown here is worth a play in my opinion, so I managed to get a fairly nice number in 4.5, but I would play this up to sort of 6.5. But again, Kansas City Chiefs minus 4.5, and that's odds are 1.8. The team I backed again last week, we're going back to Dallas. Dallas Cowboys minus 6.5 against the New Orleans Saints, and that's our odds of 1.9. Like I said in my recap in the episode a few days ago, Dak signed the biggest contract in history on Sunday morning before their game against the Browns. So he walked into Cleveland with that huge bag, and I said a few weeks back, once the Cowboys and Dak and CeeDee Lamb, once they get all those contracts sorted, they'll be in a prove it mode, and you've got to sort of expect them to ball out to prove they're worth this sort of money. That's exactly what they did in last week's NFL Week 1 betting episode. I said how I believe that the Cowboys shouldn't have been underdogs to the Browns. The Browns should have been the underdogs instead, and the line should have been flipped to -3 for the Cowboys. But I also said that I believe the line was favouring the Browns because of their solid defence and the potential of Watson getting back to his best. I would rather take the consistency of Dak, and I'm glad I did. The Cowboys smothered the Browns. Offensively, they were cooking, couldn't be stopped. Dak had 85 pass yards in the first quarter, touchdown pass to Cooks, CeeDee Lamb, 68 scrimmage yards. They virtually won that game in the first half. They entered the locker room up 20-3. Dallas at one point led the Browns 27-3 before turning on cruise control and sort of sort out the game. Dak and the offense navigated a difficult Browns defense quite nicely. They were helped out quite a few times by their defense also. So the Cowboys held Watson to 35 passing yards in the first half. Micah Parsons, DeMarcus Lawrence and co got Watson down for a couple of sacks, 6 in total on the game. Watson didn't help his team late in the game, either throwing a second interception, so he threw 2 on the day, and that was obviously in a last-ditch chance to try and get back into the game. But all in all, Dallas dominated and won 33-17. Another impressive team in Week 1 were actually the New Orleans Saints. They absolutely obliterated, annihilated, whatever you want to say. They absolutely smashed up the Panthers, 47-10, which obviously was not a scoreline that was expected from this game. They finished with 380 total scrimmage yards, 5 offensive touchdowns. They scored points on 9 straight offensive drives, and that's from a possible total 11. And they were actually the first 9 drives as well. The last 2 that they didn't score on were the last 2 drives of the game. One of them was a quarterback kneel and a few runs to see out the game. And that's actually extremely impressive. The Saints were firing on all cylinders. The Panthers couldn't stop them all game. The Saints defense got to Bryce Young with 4 sacks, forced 2 interceptions. My problem with this is I'm struggling to buy the hype. Obviously, yes, the Saints were really, really impressive and they all worked together well as a unit, etc., but they were playing the worst team in the league from last season, a team who only won 2 games. So you can imagine the difficult time they're going to have this season facing a top offensive team from last season as well. I imagine the Cowboys is going to be an extremely difficult opponent to face compared to this terrible Carolina Panthers team. It's going to be a huge challenge. Last season, the Cowboys led the league in points per game. The Saints were down in 10th in that category, and that was with a difference of 7 points. The number again for this game is -6.5, favouring the Cowboys. In 2023, the Cowboys won by a touchdown or more in 9 of their 12 victories with an average win of 21 points. The Saints lost by 7 or more in 6 of their 8 losses last season as well. I believe the Cowboys' offense will be extremely hot to handle in this matchup. I think the Cowboys will play better than they did in their game against the Browns. Maybe the Saints will be more of a challenge for Dallas too, which could be a good thing. They might step up to the plate if they are challenged a little bit more. But ultimately, the Saints defense isn't as good as the Browns defense, and the Browns defense got carved up by Dak, and Zeke, and all their skill players. And ultimately, the Saints offense sort of isn't going to be as good as it is playing a top defense, and like Dallas is. Obviously, the Panthers aren't good offensively and they aren't good defensively, so the Saints weren't really tested as well as they will be in this game against Dallas. Dallas offense is one of the best, and defense is also one of the best. So I expect the Dallas offense to click from kickoff, and I expect the Dallas defense to click from kickoff. So I'm going to go with Dallas Cowboys to win by a touchdown. So Dallas minus 6.5 at odds of 1.9. Now, I gave a small hint in my episode a few days ago where I recapped my week 1 bets, and it was in the Steelers and Falcons game. In the recap, I said it's probably not going to be the last time I back either one of those defenses, and this is that play. So I'm actually going to go to the Pittsburgh Steelers versus Denver Broncos game, and I'm actually going to go with the Steelers minus 2.5 at odds of 1.9. So this is actually a nice key number, trying to get it under 3. So I believe this is another ideal matchup for Pittsburgh Steelers. And I said it wasn't going to be long until I was back in this Steelers defense. Both the Falcons and the Steelers defense did a terrific job of securing the under for me in the win I had last week, and I'm going back to the Steelers to get the job done by a field goal in this contest as well. For me, the two defenses are in different places. The Steelers only allowed Kirk Cousins and Bijan Robinson, their offense, 226 total yards and 1 touchdown in that game. They forced the Falcons to punt 4 times. They forced 2 interceptions, a forced fumble which was recovered by none other than TJ Watt. As well as that fumble recovery, Watt also had a sack, 2 tackles for loss, 3 quarterback hits. He was as disruptive as ever, and honestly it helped the Steelers defense, and it helped the Steelers actually secure the win. The Steelers offense didn't do anything too fancy or flashy. They used their run game more than they used Fields' arm, which was probably to be expected. They almost doubled the carry to pass attempts, but they simply did enough to keep the ball moving downfield. And although they didn't score a touchdown, they managed to consistently move the ball into field goal range as they drilled home 6 field goals in total. I said that I believe Fields was the better option for this offense. I'm going to hope that he sticks around and he gets the call again this week. Again, they didn't do anything flashy or fancy. They utilised Fields' legs. He kept the clock going. He made some nice passes as well. He didn't exactly slack in the passing department. He played a nice passing game as well. He didn't do anything where it was going to get him in trouble. He played the game well. He took sacks if he needed to. He threw it away if he needed to. He didn't force anything. He did a solid job, and he managed that game well to secure the win. On the other side of this game, the Broncos, they played out a really, really scrappy game in Seattle, and they actually lost by 6 points. It actually started off really well for the Broncos in the second play of the Steelers' opening drive. The Seahawks' opening drive. The Broncos actually intercepted Geno Smith, but that was the only sort of good thing to come from this game in the end. The Broncos totaled just over 230 total yards. Bo Nix, he had 170 of those himself, so there's only another 60 for the rest of the team. He didn't set the stat sheet alight. It probably wasn't how he wanted his first NFL game to go. He threw 2 interceptions, no touchdowns. He did run 1 in. He didn't throw any. the offense was helped a huge amount by their defense. They pressured the Seahawks offense. They forced 2 safeties. Also intercepted Geno Smith on his second play, like I said. And despite starting on their first drive inside the red zone, it was on the 20-yard line, they had to settle for a field goal, so they couldn't actually convert that into a touchdown, considering how close they started that drive. A few drives later, the Broncos also forced a punt. The Steelers' return man muffs the catch. The Broncos have the ball inside the red zone again for the second time, but again they have to settle for another field goal. They couldn't turn those 2 opportunities that started off in the red zone into touchdowns, so they stuck with 6 points. The Seahawks forced the Broncos to go all the way into the final 5 minutes of the game before they finally scored that rushing touchdown for Bo Nix. This does not bode well for the Broncos, as last season the Seahawks defense ranked way down at 24th for the opposing team's points per game, and now they're actually going to face a top 8 defense from last season. They're obviously much improved in the off-season. The Steelers haven't been a top offensive team in a long time, but they won 10 games last season, which is a good feat. And they won all of those wins were by 3 or more points. On the other side, the Broncos lost 9 games in total last year. 7 of those were by a field goal or more. I said it twice last week. Defense wins championships, and defense won the Steelers' first game of the season. I don't expect that to change again this week. Whether Fields get the nod or not again this week, I hope he does. But if it is Russ, if it is Justin Fields, whoever it is, the Steelers will get the job done and win this by at least a field goal. I think the Broncos aren't any better than the Falcons. And the Steelers handled Falcons, and they kept them to just 10 points. They won that game by 8. I think it's going to be a similar story. I think the defense is going to win this game. They're not going to be challenged too much, and I think they'll be able to navigate the Broncos defense as well and score some points. Hopefully this time they'll actually score a touchdown as well, but I'll take a field goal win. I don't mind. Pittsburgh Steelers minus 2.5 at 1.9. Where are we at now? I'm actually going to go down to my NFL Week 2 fantasy selections. I've got a few more bets after this, but we'll drop it in here for the fantasy selections. As you all know, I've recently partnered with a new fantasy football app, and that is called Game Day Fantasy app. And this app allows you to basically take charge of your own team. And you're basically the GM of this team. You can pick quarterbacks, running backs, wide receivers, tight ends. You've got a flex position as well, and you also get a captain slot. And this captain slot will allow you to pick one player, and that player will get double points. So this is a really, really fun app that I've been using for a hot minute now. I've been using it a little while. Last week I shared two players that I like. One of those for the captain slot, one of those for like a value pick. Obviously the captain slot is a player that I believe is going to score a high amount of points anyway, and then you just double them. So you could potentially start off with that captain slot, and you could get very, very high. Last week was Joe Mixon. He got over 50 points, which is a good start. And then I'm going to pick a value player, which in terms of value for me, that average price per player is 5,000. So I'm looking for someone who's way lower than that 5,000, that can score points, and that player is not going to be, he's not going to be picked by a lot of players. He's going to be sort of outside the box. He has the potential to go higher than what he has been getting previously. So I'm going to go straight into my picks for this week. Now this pick was really difficult, if I'm honest. There was a few players that I was toying with. I was toying with Kyron Williams, Derrick Henry I was toying with, but essentially I went with this player, and I don't like to buy a 1 week hype, but that is actually what I've done. I found myself a sucker to this week. This player is J.K. Dobbins. He's running back for the Los Angeles Chargers. He's going to cost you 6,000 points. He's been injured for a few years, and he played an absolutely awesome game last week, and that's essentially why I've picked him again this week. So like I said, I'm starting off this fantasy section with my fantasy captain, and he's been suggested to me a few times by a few guys. A few people I know are quite high in him to have a very, very good season this season. He's coming off 2 brutal injuries, an ACL tear in 2021 and an Achilles tear in 2023. He's now back, and last week he looked like probably one of the best running backs in the game. J.K. Dobbins sliced up the Raiders defense at will. He only had 10 carries. I was expecting a little bit more, but he sort of split the carries with Gus Edwards, but he had 10 carries for the third best, 135 rushing yards, and he punched in a touchdown as well. The fantasy score he ended with last week was 22.9. Justin Herbert also threw to him a few times on checkdowns. He had 3 receptions, but they didn't really go anywhere with those opportunities. Didn't really get many yards. They get about 4. It's easy to forget that J.K. Dobbins is actually still only 25. He's a really young guy. He was let go by the Ravens. They had extremely high hopes for Dobbins in their offense. Unfortunately, he got those crucial injuries, and they kept him out for a few years. He's now in LA with the Chargers, and he's playing like he's got something to prove. And there should be plenty of opportunities in this game to do just that. In the opening week, the Carolina Panthers, they allowed the 5th most rushing yards to a running back position. They allowed 132. And last season, the Panthers allowed an average of 122 rushing yards on the season to opponents. Now, that number does include the quarterback position. But Justin Herbert, he's not a rushing quarterback, so we shouldn't have to worry about yards going to Herbert. The Chargers are touchdown favourites this week. The line is minus 6.5. If that all goes to plan, they should see more rushing opportunities towards the late stages of the game when they're trying to ice it out. Last week, J.K. Dobbins averaged 13 yards per carry, and I hope that wasn't an anomaly. I hope he can continue that production, and I expect Dobbins to rush for around 80-90 yards with a touchdown or 2. I'll be happy with 80-90 yards and a touchdown. If he gets 2, that's even better. I see the upside for selecting Dobbins is higher than the actual risk, so he has the clear potential in this LA Chargers offense. He certainly hit the game running last week with 135 yards, and obviously the Panthers allowed 132 yards last week and a touchdown, so hopefully he can replicate that again this week. Now, a guy that I'm going for in my value option is going to be, like I said, the value option, it doesn't cost a lot of money. He's a player, it won't cost a lot of money. He has the upside to score points and to save funds for the more expensive players. I'm again going to target the tight end position, and we all know this position is the position that typically brings in the least amount of points for skill players. Obviously, bar the exception for a few players like Travis Kelce, Likely, McBride, Laporta, for example. But there are players that fly under the radar to fantasy players, and these are the types of players that I potentially aim for, and I believe that they potentially set you above the rest. Looking for players that not many people will select is key to earning those extra points, and this week I'm going to go to the Kansas City Chiefs tight end, and no, it's not Travis Kelce, it's actually Noah Gray. Last week against the Ravens, Gray actually had more yards than Travis, and it was only by 3, but he made the most of his chances. Obviously, the Ravens is a very, very good defense. They've got a very good defense and secondary, in particular. Kelce is obviously Patrick Mahomes' go-to guy, but all the defensive know this, which is why he has the potential to miss out on catches and yards due to being double teamed and sometimes triple teamed. Noah Gray, he's a good pass catcher. He showed it by grabbing all 3 of his targets for 37 yards. With all the attention going towards Travis Kelce, it allowed Gray to be able to get open in space, and it could also free up space in the end zone as well. This week the Chiefs play the Bengals. Historically, they play close games against each other. 4 of the last 5 games have been one-score games. Split 3-2 in favour of the Chiefs. This is slightly a good thing if the game is slightly closer. there's going to be more passing opportunities for Patrick Mahomes, and obviously more opportunities for Noah Gray to get himself open and get some more catches. The Bengals started their season obviously terribly with a shock loss to the Patriots. In that game, they allowed Jacoby Brissett to pass for only 121 yards, but his 2 tight end targets combined for 49 yards, which means the Bengals allowed the 6th most yards to a tight end position. With an elite quarterback like Patrick Mahomes, Gray should have no problem with seeing the ball if Kelce can't create space, especially in that red zone. He's a tall, he's a big guy, big-bodied guy. I don't expect too much from Noah Gray this week, but if he can replicate what he did last week, I'd be happy with that as a productive value option. I'm going to actually predict he gets another 3 catches for 30 yards. I'll be happy with that, same as Zach Ertz got last week. If he gets a few targets in the end zone, I believe he is able to bring those down for touchdowns. So those are my 2 guys. You can get, again, J.K. Dobbins from the Chargers for 6,000. Noah Gray for the Chiefs is 2,200. And let me know if you decide to roll with these picks again this week in the comments below, and we'll run it back in the recap next week and see how these guys do. All right, now that's done, let's go back into the week 2 of the NFL bets, and this one I want to start by piggybacking off what I just said in the Steelers breakdown. The Seahawks allowed the Broncos 2 opportunities to start with a short field, both times starting those drives inside the Seattle 20 in the red zone, and the Broncos could only manage 6 points from those 2 chances. If they did that against this Patriots team, Stevenson would have himself 2 easy touchdowns. That's a fact. Secondly, I also said the Seahawks did a nice job in keeping the Broncos out of the end zone until the final 5 minutes of the game, and yet they still allowed 20 points. Admittedly, it's highly unlikely that the Patriots are going to score 2 safeties, but the fact still remains they allowed 20 points. The Seahawks had their own opportunities. They scored 26 points themselves in the win last week. They also forced a fumble, but could only score a field goal, as well as firing blanks after 2 Bo Nix interceptions. I'd expect them to work on that, and if the opportunity arises again, I expect them to turn them into points, and preferably touchdown points. That is the goal for when you secure a turnover. You want to get as many points as possible. As for the Patriots, they were the biggest underdog in week 1, and they won outright. They were dogs of -9 to the Bengals, and they actually won by 6. They themselves scored 16 points. Honestly, neither team looked really impressive. The Patriots locked up the Bengals offense, but honestly, I don't think the Patriots will be able to shut down a team for 2 straight weeks. For the first thing being, the Seahawks team is a well-rounded team, and at the moment it's probably more well-rounded than the Bengals were in week 1. Obviously, T. Higgins was out. Jamar Chase is trying to get that contract, and they've got no sort of elite running back. Geno has a few more passing options in DK Metcalf, Tyler Lockett, as well as having the better backfield run by Walker, who absolutely obliterated last week. Played really, really well. The total for this game is 37.5. Patriots games last season went over 38 points in 10 of 17, and the Seahawks went over 38 in 11 of 17. Last season, both Seattle and New York allowed opponents an average of 20 plus points per game, and they both allowed this in 11 games each in 2023. I think this is a nice spot for both teams to score some points. The Seahawks will have penciled this game for a win. Obviously, the Patriots last year being the 3rd worst team in the league, I expect them to put their foot on the gas, and we've seen it a few times last year. They scored quite a lot of points in a few games, 30 plus in a couple, but we can't forget that the Seahawks are fairly prone to giving up points as well. I also expect Stevenson in particular and the rest of the Patriots offense to get some points on the board too. Jacoby Brissett hasn't played. He didn't play very well last week, but again, they managed to score 16 points, and that was basically behind Stevenson. So I fully expect Stevenson to be able to run this game for the Patriots, get a touchdown himself, and hopefully Jacoby Brissett can throw one, or at least set up the team to score some points. And again, the Seahawks, I expect the same thing from them. I expect them to capitalise on those opportunities if they do get them, and score some points. So the total is quite low. I'm actually liking this total. So the Seahawks and Patriots over 37.5, and that's at odds of 1.87. You can shop around a little bit. You can probably buy a point and keep it within playable range. I would play this up to around. I'd try and keep it under 40 if possible. But 37.5 is the number I got, and that was odds at 1.87. And the final play of the week, I'm going to go with the final play of the week, and that's on Monday Night Football. I'm not going to play anything in the Tuesday night game, but I am going to go Monday Night Football. Bear in mind, when I say Monday Night Football and all this kind of stuff, I'm in the UK, yeah, so the time zone is a huge difference. So this game I'm referring to now is the Chicago Bears against the Houston Texans, and the play I'm going to go with is the Bears team total under 19.5. This should be a really fun game this week. A lot of hype is surrounding both of these two teams. Obviously, the Texans, they blew up last year, and a lot of people are expecting the Bears to follow in the Texans' footsteps from last year. The Texans potentially went from a bottom team, so they possibly went from worst to first. They were a bottom team in 2022, and they moved towards a top team in 2023. The Bears are expected to follow suit after drafting Caleb Williams in the most recent draft, a 2022 Heisman Trophy winner. Things didn't start so well for Caleb and the Bears, however. Yes, they got an opening week win, but they didn't look comfortable and they didn't look confident during that win at all. In fact, they looked pretty awful. The defense and Will Levis saved them from a loss. Williams threw for under 50%, and he was only 93 yards in the passing game. And the Titans absolutely smothered him and the run game for the Bears. They smothered the whole offense. The Bears offense could only score 9 points, and that's from 3 field goals, despite being given short field from Will Levis. Some questionable decisions by Will Levis actually allowed the Bears to capitalise. Two interceptions, a forced fumble, which eventually allowed them a way back into the game. So their defense played better than their offense. As for the Texans, they had a difficult game against the dual threat quarterback Richardson and the Colts. They allowed the Colts 27 points in total. The Texans defense did hold Richardson to just 9 passing completions from 19 attempts, but he did total over 200 yards. He totaled 212 yards. The Colts were helped by the defense as they blocked the Texans' punt. It set them up on the 5-yard line, which it was actually finished off with a 5-yard Jonathan Taylor rushing touchdown. The Texans' defense did okay. I expect them to be better this week and throughout the rest of the season. The Texans forced an interception, 2 sacks, 5 tackles for loss, and 2 quarterback hits against the Colts. I honestly expect that to increase again against this O-line that struggles to keep anyone safe. Never mind Caleb Williams. Obviously, the Bears O-line has been a big problem for a number of years. Last year with Justin Fields, and the same story again this year with Caleb Williams. The Bears actually allowed the Titans 5 quarterback hits, 2 sacks, 5 passes deflected, and also allowed 8 tackles for loss on the game. I don't expect the Bears defense to help the offense by scoring points either this week. I believe the Texans defense will be able to contain the Bears offense in a similar way the Titans did last week. I'm going to say that the Texans offense is a lot better than the Titans offense. So I don't think the defense is going to be able to turn over the Texans as much as they did last week with Will Levis, throwing them the ball basically for a touchdown. I know it's very early in the season. It's only week 2. I do actually expect things to turn around for the Bears. I expect them to improve a lot, but I believe that to be towards the back end of the season, towards the second half. And the same goes with the Texans. I also expect them to keep improving. Everyone's setting them sort of a high bar, high standard, and I don't think the standard was as good as it should have been from them last week. So I expect them to keep improving every week. But while this Bears offense looks absolutely terrible, I'm happy to play the Bears to score less than 20 points in this game this week. So that now does bring us to the end of this episode. I'm going to wrap up this episode. I'm going to go through the plays I played again. As a little reminder, all these plays are one unit wagers. So the first play is going to be Colts -3 at odds of 1.9. The second is the Kansas City Chiefs -4.5, and that's at odds of 1.8. The third play is the Cowboys -6.5, and that's at odds of 1.9. We move down to the Pittsburgh Steelers -2.5 at odds of 1.9. Next one is Seattle Seahawks and the New England Patriots over 37.5. I got that at odds of 1.87. And then we move on to my final play of this week, and that is the Bears team total under 19.5, and that's at odds of also at 1.87. So there's my card finalised for this week. I appreciate everyone for listening this far. It's been quite a big one this week. I feel like I got a lot of information crammed into a small amount of time. I'll be back again on probably Wednesday next week with a recap of this week, a recap of my fantasy plays and how they did. Hopefully we end in some profit again this week. So I hope everyone enjoys their Sunday tomorrow, watching the games, cash and tickets hopefully. So let's lock and load these plays in together. Get in the comments if you liked any of these plays and what your favourite play was. Follow me on all socials. Anywhere you get your podcasts from, Apple Music, Spotify, anything like that. All the links will be in my link tree below. Make sure you follow all of them. If you're on all of them, follow all of them. Notifications on so you don't miss a single episode. Get in the Discord. We're in the Discord, myself and Daily. Join the Discord 24/7 practically. Chats and stuff all about a number of sports at the moment. College football and NFL is popping. And yeah, follow me on Twitter. Get everything. Follow me on everything. Let's get involved. Spread the word. Spread the love. And have a good Sunday. And we'll be back next week with a recap. So see you next week.